Hey, what's up guys? In this video I'm going to tell you about why I really like Access Virus synths. I actually have three of them. I have the Polar, I have a Snow, and then I have the KC behind me. It's that black keyboard right there. I have three of them. The reason why is because I just find their sound really special, and you know, over the years it's really kind of pushed my productions. It's one of those special things. I don't know what it is, but it has a particular sound. And I have a theory. And that theory is that it's a digital synth trying to be analog, and it tries and it exceeds, right? It can become more analog, I guess. It tries hard and it, like, yeah, I don't know what it is. It also is the like complex math that goes in there and the special things under the hood that I can't even begin to understand, 10 years later, and it still is unparalleled in my opinion. And I was not paid to say that. So I'm going to just go through and kind of tell you what makes it so special to me. Okay, so when you open it up, right, you can do this all in the synth, but I want you to have something special to look at, which is the uh, TI, total integration aspect of the synth. Is you can just work with it in a VST. You can actually have this disembody in another room. And as long as it's on and it's connected via USB, you can do all sorts of fun stuff. So, yeah, you start out 16 parts. So 16 synths in one. We're just going to focus on this part right here. You got your volume slider. Right? What that is that's the default patch, which is 2 oscillators. So I'm just going to set it to 1. And what's really cool is there's different oscillator modes. So this is kind of like, this is the classic version, the same version that is in the KC, which came out years and decades previous. Right, so all the older synths are built into the new ones, right? So this is the classic mode. So it's sine wave to saw to square. And I want to point something out, is that the saw isn't quite a saw. There's like, it's very sinusoidal. I'll actually give you a demonstration. I'll go tools. I want my multi-analyzer right here. Forgive me. All right, so we have our multi-analyzer open. All right, let's go oscilloscope here. So you'd think that the square looks like this, but it actually doesn't. It has a roundness to it. Can I actually pause that? I don't think I can. I know I can, but I just, whatever. Right, so it kind of ramps up, and on the low end, it's round. So this is a very dark synth, and this is what contributes to its sound. And where that comes from is the DSP, like the shape of that changes as you go up the keyboard. As you go up in notes, that shape will change. As you go down, that shape will be more rounded. So it's not like a static kind of vector saw wave. It's a little bit different. That you can actually change that in the characteristic. This model is the output type, and this is the default here. You can kind of take that away or increase it, make it sound even more dark. It's an analog boost, and you have varying different ways that you can emulate the actual output amplifier of the synth. Right, so this is a digital synth trying to be analog, and it exceeds because it's not emulating just one thing. It's emulating a lot, and you can mix and mash them all together and stuff like that. So back in the day, we didn't have a whole lot of DSP, and there was, what you had was just like VSTs that you can count on like 2 hands and a couple toes. And they didn't sound that good. They were aliasy. We had, Silent 1 changed the game quite a bit. And that's why it remained popular for a very long time, because it had this like unison spread that you could stack up, and it could emulate the JP8080, which is this blue thing right here. This is the JP8080 or JP8000. That's something called a super saw on it, which is 7 saws stacked up. And this took it a little bit further. There was, oh yeah, so let me just finish with the classic modes here. So in the original, like at least the Virus KC, which is the keyboard version of the Virus C. So an ABC, TI, TI2, right? And technically the Snow is a TI. This Polar is a TI2. And yeah, it's just like it has double the DSP. So you could have more notes, which you can have up to 80 voices, which is pretty insane. So this is a classic mode. You also had these wavetables hidden. And these are all of your wavetables, which you can cycle through. And these are, you know, very usable wavetables used for like a lot of bases of old school tracks. Like I really enjoy digital synths. Like I have the Nord, JP, Virus. I like digital ones. I need to get a Nova. But I don't like analog. It just doesn't sound neat to me, you know. It's not exciting. Like there's no nostalgia. I was born in the late 80s, right? Doesn't apply to me, sorry. But I like digital things that you can grab, and it's like so and so uses sound to make a bass. To me, that's really exciting. Right, so you have all those sounds, which if you FM modulate them or distort, which we're going to get into, the Virus has amazing distortion. Again, it exceeds an analog. These sound pretty good. So yeah, there's that. So it becomes available when you go to the sine wave, when you cycle through, and then you can actually, you know, morph between and kind of adjust and stuff like that, kind of like wave shapey. And it's not stepped. That's really important. It interpolates right between these values, right? And that's what makes the Virus filter, even though it's digital and it's controlled by a knob, it's interpolated. So there's no right? The Nord steps, which I guess is one of those sounds, but you know, that's the downfall of certain digital things. Analog stuff doesn't step. It's like discrete, you know, like a time of discretion. I'm just gonna make up words as I go along. So that's the classic version. And then we got the Hypersaw. The Hypersaw came along and blew my pants off. All right, so there's this is the Hypersaw feature or oscillator. And, you know, you can have up to 32 of these, which is insane. All stacked up and mixed and stuff like that. Right, so this is a Virus. This is a German take on the Super Saw. It's called the Hypersaw. Right? Doesn't do much, but we detune. Right? That doesn't sound like much because it's just a single oscillator. And this is where it gets exciting. There is a unison section. Not just twin, 2 times unison, unison in stereo. There's 8 times unison. And what this does is this detunes the left and right, and you get, in my opinion, the Virus sound. So I'm going to pan spread. Right? You have what appears to be an itchy nose on my part, but you have that Virus sound. We're getting there, though. We're getting there. You can also stack up another Hypersaw on oscillator 2 and mix that in. Maybe have that an octave up. And we'll just increase that. No matter how many voices you add to this Hypersaw, it doesn't affect the voicing. It's really smart in how it It's really smart. It really isn't, and it's really confusing on how it allocates voicing. So what you have is you have 80 voices in this thing, but as far as I know, like you'll have like one voice dedicated to oscillator 1, and another voice dedicated to oscillator 2, and you might take another voice for, well, obviously you have double that for the twin unison, but then you have like another voice for the effect, like delay and reverb will take like 2 or 3 voices depending on what it's doing. And yeah, voicing is kind of like processor resources, essentially. Anyway. Right. Then we have noise, which doesn't take any additional voicing. So we can get that kind of aliasy sound if we want. And the cool thing about the virus is you can get down right low and it doesn't sound odd. Right. Also, there's a punch intensity, so you can add an attack in if you want. It saves you an envelope. Very exciting. And you have various oscillator syncing, so you can do like FM and stuff like that. You can FM from different wave shapes and stuff like that. I'm gonna continue on kind of quickly. They added these wave tables, quite a few of them actually, and I'll just move over here. So you can get like interesting kind of sound design droney types. And interpolate between that, that's out there, and stuff like that. Whole bunch of different wavetables, wavetable pulse width modulation, which you can get some weird stuff. Grain synthesis, which I haven't even begun to wrap my head around. It's just more kind of complicated math with those bass wavetables. These aren't the original wavetables. These are updated ones, which I assume will be in sequential iterations of the virus line. You know, we're well overdue for a new virus synth, in my opinion. You know, still using USB 1. But yeah, still pretty good. It also has hardware outputs as well. You got format, which is basically pitch shifting using math, and there's a bunch of them here. It uses a few more voices. It's kind of complicated. Right, so the possibilities are kind of endless, I guess. And you can actually modulate anything here. So yeah, let's go back to Hypersaw for now. All right, let's move on to the filters. Now, these are filters, but they're a little bit different. These filters have their own saturation section. Like they have dedicated saturation independent of the post filter saturation. So, and there's distortion too, so that's pretty bananas. And the filters are really interesting. Right, so you got the filter envelope already kind of set there. You can increase that amount. Right, so we're getting close to the virus sound. That's more of a pluck. Right, but what we can do is we can saturate with a number of these kind of drop downs. So we can get like wave shaper, rectifier. Rectifier is very popular with basses and trance music. And I'm actually going beyond the oscillator volume. Right, so right now it's at 0 down here, see? And we can go into saturation. We can actually increase the resonance as well. Right, really beefy filters. But what we have here also is analog mode, which is low pass 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which kind of, it boosts up the processing needed. But yeah, the analog, or the saturation is locked to a particular analog overdrive, which is based on several Moogs. Yeah, we got 4-pole, 3-pole, 2-pole, and 1-pole. Right, so yeah, analog filters, pretty neat. With saturation. Oops, it's hard to play with my left hand and use the mouse and not actually touch it. I'm doing it on the TI thing. So yeah, there's that. They added some additional envelopes here. Right, this one is hard mapped to the filter, and these 2, 3, and 4 can be mapped to anything really. And you get the amplifier envelope here buried in the filter. Right, that might be a little too quiet, so I'll bring that back up. And the same volume is in here, and it gives you a little diagram. All right, cool. So yeah, over here we have some LFOs, and it has a really good kind of usability. So like when you're using a virus, it's like things are kind of laid out in front of you, and in an easy way. And if you want to, you can delve in and really dig in. But you have LFO 1, 2, and 3. Cool. Different shapes, sample and hold, all that sort of thing. You can sync it to your clock, which is to your DAW. And you can, this is really special, the mono. I'll explain what that does in a bit. And then you have these hard linked modulation sources, or sorry, destinations. So yeah, we have our alpha 1 here. We have the pitch of oscillator 1 and 2, and we can link, right? So they put some thought into like, what are these common things that when you're making a synth patch, what do you want to do? Okay, well, I want to modulate the pitch, the pulse width, the resonance of the filter, and the filter gain. And then you have like this wild card down here, you know, in case you, I want to, you know, attach the LFO. I want to modulate this one thing. Yeah, here it is. All right, or reverb time, for example, and you can do that, which is pretty cool. And then for your second filter or your second LFO, you can modulate filters. Filter, and LFO shape, pan, and FM amount, which is pretty useful. And then you have another assign here. And there's that. And then you have LFO modulation here. This third LFO is kind of special because there's a fade in. So if there's no fade in and we modulate the pitch, just gonna open that. Turn down the saturation. Or I can just leave it. Add to the character. Go back here. Right, and I might just take that off. Set this to classic. Right, so we have, you know, this being modulated, oscillator 1 and 2 pitch. But we can also fade it in, which is, you know, pretty interesting. Also, with how the unison works, is each LFO, you can unisonize the LFO. So let me just kind of explain what that's doing. So say if you have like 8 voices here on the unison. So this will sound kind of like a hypersaw, but different. Right, And that's with 8 voices of this particular thing. You can also, you know, make a supersaw out of this shape. Right, pretty cool. And then if we wanted to do that pitch modulation thing up here, sounds weird. And the reason why is this LFO is independently pitching each of the 8 voices independently. So the LFO is being offset per voice by this amount here. We can just quickly fix that. We can just make the LFO mono. You can get some wacky tacky sounds with that, and that is our LFO section. And then, if you want to go bananas, which I tend to do from time to time, is you got the matrix section. And here you can have, you know, sources, which would be LFO being assigned to varying amounts, and you can even have LFO being assigned to LFO2 rate. You could do all sorts of stuff in here, or you can have, you know, these are hardwired to the mod wheel for expression and performance. But then, yeah, you can have like the pitch bend do something completely weird, or things like that. And these things you can modulate or automate in Ableton, which is pretty cool. And yeah, and this is where these envelopes occur. The envelope 3, which was in the filter section, is there, which is pretty exciting. And then you can, you know, have 2 more envelopes that you can map things to. And they added that in OS 5, which is pretty nice. So there is an ARP here. I'm actually just going to init this. All right, so I have initted that, and we have just classic ARP. Go up and down. And then you do all sorts of stuff, up, down. And then we have, oops, sorry. Then we have all these classic patterns, because the Virus C, the one that I have, has all these patterns. These things are kind of put forward. Right, and these are just basic patterns. Right, so if we just, you know, make a quick little patch here. You do all sorts of fun stuff like that. Yeah, you can go through all these classic patterns, and then you can even like kind of do your own pattern and stuff like that. And you can even like randomize and like make your own, or like randomize your own. So that low end is the virus sound and stuff like that. And you got like note length and swing and resolution. So it's an arpeggiator, but then they went ahead and added the old patterns from the classic machines. All right, so from here, let's just turn that off and do that. We have 2 effects pages. Now these are pretty neat. We've already kind of went over the character, and this is like the output amplifier, or the output ballistics of when it's about to leave the machine. This is kind of what it is. So we can like boost it, analog boost. We can get vintage, and you know, pad opener, bass enhancer. Got a speaker cabinet. You can emulate like a speaker cabinet, and they went on to make a amplifier emulation of a bunch of different amplifiers. They went on and made something, I totally forget what it's called. Kemper Profiler. They made the Kemper Profiler, which they use this technology in, which is pretty cool. Best of luck with that hopefully you make a new synth sometime soon. Then we have our distortion section. So we have our filter distortion or saturation, which is how the filter. See, the thing back in the day when they had like the Moog synth, you would take the output of the synth and then like the external out option, and then run it into with a cable, a real life cable. You'd run it into the input for the filter on the old Moog synths from like the 70s, and then you'd boost that, and then you get like a feedback, and then you get like this awesome kind of saturation, and you can see that in the emulations, and they actually included that in later iterations, like the oh my goodness, the Voyager. They added the Voyager. It had an option to like to give feedback drive with a knob. You didn't actually need to like wire it in, and that's what the filter is doing. And then in the virus here, we have a multitude of distortions, which, you know, the curry, onion, and these different overdrives they used in their Kemper profiler, and they kind of ran off with it. So, you know, we got wide, and wide is a good example of emulating analog and then exceeding what analog is. I'm going to actually do a better example. I'm going to do that. Go over to my filter, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to go bandpass. Okay, so we got that. Now this sound, the bandpass, really goes well into the distortion. So we got wide here. Right, so wide is like gentle. Right, so you can like just make some acid. Or better yet, we can like arpeggiate this. Right, and things like that. Right, just as an example. And I'll go through them kind of briefly. We got light distortion. So the wide is like, let's make something that like is very gentle to very aggressive, but the same kind of distortion. Right, and then, oops, light is a different thing. And then we got hard digital. Digital here. Digital's more digital. If you want it, rectifier is a very famous effect. Right, things like that. See, the distortion is not to be looked over. You got rate and bit reducer, which, sorry, this actually might sound better. Right, and then soft balance is sine fold, so you're like doing some like wave shaping. You got the old rate reducer. Right, all sorts of cool sounds with that. And then you got the overdrives. And you can go through all those. Right, just as a basis. So that's just an oscillator, a filter, and some distortion, which I think is pretty exciting. See, I never really yeah, I don't really play around with this and like go through everything, because then I remember I was like, oh yeah, I remember doing that. I used to do that all the time. Yeah, when I had my when I got my snow for the first time, I did that for hours. It was amazing. So let's do that, and we'll go back to our effects. So that's distortion. We got varying degrees of chorus. Yeah, let's make something delicious. Right, and then these have hard mapped modulation. And the thing about the virus is you can have all these going on at once, and we're only on the first effects page. We also got a phaser. Right, and this is where we're getting into virus territory. This is where, like, hide your grandma because the virus is coming. Right, and like we're only using we're not even doing much. Right, there's a phaser, of course, multiple stages, pulls, things of that nature. Filter bank. Filter bank was added. Filter bank is pretty cool. There's different filters, a post, like you just get another filter, and it comes during the effects stage, which is pretty cool. Right, comb filter, you know, vowel filter, boost resonance. Right, all these different vowels, ring mod. I apologize to your ears. These really kind of interesting filters. So you don't get like low pass, high pass, and band pass. We'll go 4-volt. You get like a mixture of the three. So you got low pass here. And then we can sweep between low pass, band pass, and high pass. Kind of like how actually the Ableton filter works. So it's just more flexibility in sound generation and things like that. And yeah, low pass filter, variable slope. So as you go up in pulls, it becomes more and more intense, things like that. We'll just leave that off. Then you got an EQ, which is essentially just extra filters, really. You can easily add aggression this way. All right, so that is oh yeah, we got like an envelope follower, which you can kind of trigger things into the input. Right, it's still a synth. It does stuff, but yeah, there's that. And the atomizer we won't get into quite yet. So there's that. Now we have FX2, which is delay and reverb, and the vocoder, which we also won't get into because I'll spare you that. Get different delays, classic, and yeah, I like this 316. Right, cool stuff like that. You can also modulate. We can add color. Typically, you want to make it a little bit darker than that. Reverb. Reverb sounds special. that. We can also increase the decay. We can go Hall and then give it some kind of roll off color. What it does is it basically cuts off the high ends when I move it over here, or we'll cut out the low end. All right, so when you go up an octave or whatever. Right, you got that synthy vibe going on. And yeah, there's all of that, which is pretty cool. Sub-Osc, I probably forgot some things. But yeah, I thought it'd be fun to just kind of go through it. And there's some questions I get. It's like, what's that big white synth on your desk? Stuff like that. And I'm just like, yeah, now you know. Also common, you can set it to mono, hold, you know, different kind of synth modes, the pitch bend, amounts. So -2, you typically want to go -12 and then +12. Then you have your scale, exponential or linear, depending on what you're into. And yeah, you got your patch utility and stuff like that, which, you know, basic utility stuff. But yeah, that's basically it. Hope you guys enjoyed. I just like to kind of make content and just talk about stuff, and sometimes people enjoy hearing me talk about stuff that I'm into and just kind of going through things. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Take care and check out the links in the description and have a good one.